Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa.
Homage to the blessed, noble, and perfectly enlightened one.
Homage to the blessed, noble, and perfectly enlightened one.
Namo sadanto suchedoye ulahudi samya sanpatoshe.
Namo sadanto sucepoye alahati samyao sambuddhase.
无上甚深微妙法，百千万劫难遭遇。我今见闻得受持，愿解如来真实义。Supreme and wondrous Dharma, subtle and profound, rarely is encountered, even in billions of eons. But now we see and hear it and accept it reverently. May we truly understand the Buddha's actual meaning. 师父上人，各位师兄，大家阿弥陀佛。Venerable Master, Dharma friends, welcome to our Sutra lecture today. My name is Heng. We're about to launch into our investigation of the Flower Garland Sutra, the Entering the Dharma Realm chapter 39, the Ganda Vyuha, the Rufa Jiepin, sometimes known as the Entering the Realm of Reality. So that's what we're about, and if you've come to join, welcome. Appreciate all the volunteers whose hard work and effort puts this on the road. There's, in front of me, we have 3 computers and 3 microphones and all of the equipment that is required to put my presence here in the Buddha Hall of the Gold Coast Dharma Realm out onto YouTube and onto Zoom with translation into Putonghua, into Mandarin, and also into Vietnamese. So much appreciated, all of the hard work, all the hands and the hearts that go into making this lecture possible around the world. So let us now, there we go, continue with our protocols. We're going to invoke spiritual presence here, ask the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas of the Avatamsaka assembly to draw near, and we do that musically. Please join in. One more. Okay, bravo. Well done, everyone around the world who's singing along. How nice to unite our hearts in a request for the sutra. We're going to move forward to acknowledge the country and say that the Kombumeri people of the Ugambi language region practiced spiritual connections to land and to all creation here in this location for thousands of years, tens of thousands of years. Today we acknowledge them as traditional custodians and original storytellers of these lands. We offer our respect to their elders, past, present, and emerging, and to all First Nations peoples whose sovereignty was never ceded. We're going to add the tens of thousands. There we go, tens of thousands of years. Furthermore, we want to say that 空不灭人在他们祖先的土地上修炼着他们与土地和万物的精神联系已有数万年。今天我们承认他们在这个土地上传统监护人和原始讲故事的人，并且向他们过去、现在和新兴的长老们，我们表示敬意。以及主权从未破割让的所有第一民族人民们表示敬意。Yes, indeed. Now, to finish up our protocols here, we have the bell song, and we have a lovely bell whose voice will be heard right now. Bell sound wide resounds throughout 100 million worlds. The Buddha's law is heard and spread all throughout the triple world. The wondrous sounds that everywhere fill the Dharma realm with peace. May those who hear it gain the strength to follow in faith the Buddha's path. 众生传三千界内，佛法让万亿国中，共训起法界和平，利益报贪我后的。That does it for the protocols. Now, let's get into our story. This is a powerful part of our chapter 39. Buddha announced he was available to speak this Dharma. The Dharma was requested. He came down, took a seat in the Jada Grove in India. And the palace there, the pagoda, the pavilion where the sutra is about to be explained, expanded magically to big enough to include everybody who's coming. And everybody came. Bodhisattvas flew in from 10 different directions, and each of them made their offerings and sat down and prepared to hear the Dharma. And the sutra next praises the bodhisattvas and explains who they are, what they could do, and of course, the things that the bodhisattvas can do are from the point of view of science, you say it's magical, because ordinary ways of measuring with our limited language powers and our limited consciousness can't observe a bodhisattva using his or her deva eye to see into the heavens, to see into the hells, to see everything going on between heaven and earth and beyond heaven and earth. We can't see that, but the bodhisattvas can. And there's very much the sense in the sutra that it's a parallel reality happening just there, right? Where is it? It's there. And you kind of have to point to it because my eyes can't see it, my ears can't hear it, my mind can't get there, but you know it's happening. The Buddha wouldn't be describing this to sell books, to sell sutras. He wouldn't be describing this to win a debate. It's real. It's really happening. This experience of what the bodhisattvas are seeing, the generic name for it is Shen Tong Miao Yong, right? The psychic powers, psychic abilities, is happening right here. And so we who are in the realm of duality, still bound up in consciousness, we can point to it, we can read the Buddha's account of it and go, wow, gee, we can praise it and be amazed by it, but to actually directly experience it, So the sutra describes, and it's quite marvelous. It's the Avatamsaka state, Huayan Jingjie. Wow. There are wonderful flowers made of vajra falling from the air, and these flowers emit multicolored lights, and the lights shine and radiate throughout thousands of worlds. And from the lights emitted from the flowers, come voices, and the voices are speaking the Dharma. So there's clouds of offerings being given worldwide, multiple worlds, infinite world systems. And yet, what we see is the Buddha, this tall monk in a rag robe, sitting there in meditation. That's what our eyes see. Bodhisattvas and those who have affinities see all of these wonderful things filling space. So next, the sutra says, among those who didn't see were 500 great disciples, 500 great arhats. And it labels them as two-vehicle cultivators. Two-vehicle cultivators are also called Shravakas, sound hearers and voice hearers. And they also name what are called Wai Dao. And Wai Dao, hard to translate. It means heretics, we would say. That's a pejorative, that's a negative way to see them. You'd say they're non-Buddhists, or they are disbelievers, or you could even say they're followers of other religions, non-Buddhist religions. But it's Wai Dao. Literally, the Wai Dao is believers in practices that take you outside of your own mind. Wai, external, Dao, path. So we don't really quite have one English word that corresponds to that, so you have to use a lot of words to capture. So it means, you could say, strictly speaking, that it's anybody who is a believer in a theistic religion. Any religion that's got a theos, that's got a god or a goddess, yeah, that's Wai Dao, because it says the power is out there. The power is in heaven. The power is beyond you. You are creation. He is creator. She is creator. So to be a good follower, you have to worship that external divine being. That's Wai Dao. Buddhism, by contrast to that, says, you could say we are Nei Dao. That is to say, the energy returns. You look to your own mind. The mind replaces that divine being as the creator. So that's where you start looking. In the Chinese, Master Hua would always say, Hui Guang Fan Zhao, look within, introspect. That's where you start your work. And when that work is done, when the mind is uncovered and developed and refined and cultivated, then all of these incredible, wonderful spiritual faculties and functions and abilities emerge from that one place. The mind is the single most powerful creation engine in existence, and the Buddha Dharma is methods to bring it to light up the mind, to uncover it. So that's Wai Dao. Okay, here we are by the Jade Grove, and the Buddha is manifesting all these incredible functions of his awakened mind. The Bodhisattvas are right there because why? Their purpose for coming is they're there in order to learn from the Buddha so they can go back to where they came from and teach. That way their vows come alive. There are 500 arhats, and we name their leaders, and there are also these other Wai Dao believers who don't see what the Buddha's doing. They can't see it. They can't witness it. They can't share it. They can't be motivated by it, moved by it, excited by it, inspired by it to follow the Buddha. They are content with their own accomplishments, which can be marvelous and profound. They put an end to desire if they're arhats, but they don't go any further, and they don't see the potential of the mind. If we had to sum it up, what's missing is the bodhi resolve, putishin, that bodhicitta, that thought that I'm going to take my mind to the ultimate point, empty the self, empty all dharmas, and cultivate the way to liberate all living beings. That's the bodhi resolve. And starting with living beings in my own mind, all my bad habits, I'm going to change those because those are the ones I actually can change and influence. So then they set out on the path to learn all the 84,000 methods that will work to teach infinite numbers of different kinds of living beings. That's the Bodhisattva's path's beginning. That's the beginning of the path, the Bodhi resolve. So they don't do that. And they're enlightened, they're awake, good enough, right? They're content in their end of suffering. Suffering's over, I'm done. That's the arhat's resolve, and you can't diminish the size of that accomplishment. It's huge, but it's not the whole story. So the Avatamsaka wants to preserve, is dedicated to preserving the fullness of the human mind once awakened. That's what it's about. And to accept a partial would be to lose all of the other wonders, all of the other majesty of the fully developed, fully awakened human mind. So unwilling to let that just dry up and go away, the Avatamsaka says these two vehicle cultivators and the Wai Dao, the heretical non-Buddhist believers, fall short. So that's why so much of this chapter and this scroll where we are is devoted to saying how sad it is. Are we ready? Now, last week we did 2 of 10 analogies for that situation. We're going to go back to the start so you can get the whole feeling of it. And the first and the second ones are the important ones. The next 8 are just developments of that theme. So we're going to go back to where we're going to go back and review the first and the second that we read last week. And I'm going to take a little more time to share this. And then we're going to read on through the next 8. And then I've got 2 really wonderful stories that are related that I'm going to share with you all today. Here we go. Jumping right in. What's it like when 500 members of the audience don't get what the Buddha is saying? It's like this. Ready? 佛子如恒河岸，有百千亿无量恶鬼，罗行疾苦，具体交染，五救豺狼进来搏错，为渴所逼，欲求水饮，水住河边而不见河，设有见者见其枯竭，何以故？身后业障之所缚故。以大声闻亦复如是，虽然住在湿豆林中，不见如来广大神力，舍一切智，无明亦没，复其眼故，不曾种植萨婆若地，诸善根故。Okay, who says the Avatamsaka is philosophy? I don't get that. Here we go. Disciples of the Buddha, by the shores of the river Ganges, there are hundreds and thousands of millions of limitless numbers of hungry ghosts who are all naked, hungry, and thirsty. Their entire bodies are scorched and aflame. Ravens, eagles, and wolves rush to seize them. These ghosts are extremely oppressed by thirst. They crave water to quench their thirst. Though they live by the side of the river, they cannot see it. And once they caught sight of the river, it would instantly dry up. And why? Because they're covered over by their deep and weighty karmic obstacles. The state of all these great Shravakas are similar. Although they stayed in the midst of the Jeta Grove, they couldn't see the thus come one's vast, great psychic powers. That was because they had renounced omniscience. Their eyes were covered by the cataract of ignorance. It was also because they had not planted the good roots of the various stages of Sarvajna. Okay, so we did that last week. This is a review. For example, this is an analogy. It's not, the sutra is just reaching to illustrate the situation with the arhats in the Jeta Grove. So it says, visualize, if you will, the riverbank, the Ganges, water rushing downstream. And on the riverbank, there are hungry ghosts, preta, ugui, and they're really sad. Look at their situation. Naked, hungry, thirsty, so no clothes, no food, no drink. Their bodies are burning. Furthermore, raptors, ravens, eagles, wolves, things that are carnivorous, come down and eat them. They're impressed by thirst. They're really, really thirsty, and right by the riverbank, they can't drink. They don't see the river. They don't know there's water right there. And if they could see the river, it would dry up. Why? This is the state of being a hungry ghost. Their karmic obstacles weight them down and prevent them from satisfying their thirst, quenching their thirst when there's water right there. How sad. So just on its own, that's the story with the Dharma realm known as Gui Fa Jie, the realm of ghosts. How awful, how sad to be in the ghost body and suffering like that, right? It's really pathetic and sad. So now, an analogy gives you a picture of something you can understand to describe something that you don't have a picture of. So here it is. The Shravakas, the voice hearers, are there, same way. They're right in the Jeta Grove, but they can't see what the Buddha wants them to see. They can't understand the majestic qualities that the Buddha is displaying to teach the bodhisattvas so they can teach living beings in turn. And it's not that they have heavy karmic obstacles, it's because they didn't seek to bring all of their mind to light. They stopped halfway. They had ignorance remaining. They emptied out the self. They hadn't emptied out dharmas in their samadhi. They hadn't planted the good roots of omniscience. So the bodhisattva's mantras, they didn't recite. The Buddha's names, they didn't recite. The vows to take across living beings, they didn't make those vows. Okay? So far so good? Yeah, sad story. Okay, second analogy, number 2. We covered this last week, but let's look at it again. Here we go. 譬如有人于大会中昏睡安寝，忽然梦见须弥山顶，地势所住，善见大成，宫殿园林种种言好，天子天女百千万亿，普散天花，遍满其地，种种艺术出妙衣服，种种华术开复妙华，诸音乐术周天音乐，天诸才女各用美音，无量诸天与中喜乐。Okay, now we've been down to the realm of ghosts. We're now swapping Dharma realms, going past Asuras, past humans, up to Deva's realm. Suppose a person in the assembly were to fall sound asleep and dream of seeing the great city of wholesome views on the summit of Mount Sumeru, where Lord Chakra dwells. He might dream of palaces, groves, parks, and many decorations. He might dream of gods and goddesses by the hundreds of thousands of millions, universally scattering aloft celestial flowers covering the ground. Many trees of garments bring forth wonderful robes. Many blossoming trees burst in luxuriant bloom. Many musical trees play celestial music. The celestial maidens sing beautiful melodies, and an immeasurable number of gods frolic in the midst of it. Okay, what's going on? This is the heavens. The sutra is amazing. It's as if the sutra has given us the Tian Yan Tong, the power of celestial vision, opening that eye so that we can see what it's like to be a hungry ghost. Now, what's it like to be a deva? Here it is. Now, the analogy is somebody's asleep and they're dreaming. As the analogy finishes, we're going to find out this person is the one who can see. This is the bodhisattva who can see what the Buddha is doing. In this case, to make the analogy's picture, it says, what's it like in the heavens? Okay, the Shanjian Cheng, it says, the city of wholesome views, often that is described as a palace. This is the heaven of the 33, Sansra Santian. Who lives there? God on high. This is God the Father. In Buddhism, his name is Shakra Devanam, Indra. He's there in this beautiful place. Notice that it doesn't mention Indra's net, because Indra's net is one of the decorations of the Shanjiancheng, the Wholesome Views Palace. So Lord Chakra's there, and the dreamer sees him. Palaces, groves, parks, adornments, goddesses, just sending flowers up, covering the ground, trees that give you clothing that you love, perfect size, perfect fit, perfect fabric, perfect weight, perfect color, everything you like about this particular style of clothing, right there for you on the trees. Take it down, put it on, perfect. What else? Music. So your body feels super comfortable. Your ears are delighted by Deva's music from trees. Whoa, what a blessing, right? This is when your blessings appear. So the young Devis sing. The sound is otherworldly. You've never heard music as beautiful as this. And the Devas there are happy. They're frolicking. Okay? That's what's going on in the heavens. So we borrowed the Buddha's Tianyan. He's loaning it to us so we can see it, celestial vision. And there's more. And after that, we're going to find out about the state of the Deva. So from here, we can say, right, what's it like? Here we go. 七人自见诸天衣服，普于其处，住之周旋，其大会中，一切诸人随同一处，不知不见。何以故？梦中所见，非彼大众所能见故。The person sees himself wearing celestial robes, everywhere, traveling to each of these places, stopping and mingling with them. All of the other people within the Great Assembly, although present in the same place, neither know nor see these things. Why is that? Because what the dreamer sees is a vision that the Great Assembly cannot behold. Okay, now to finish the analogy, to give you the other side of it, it says, Sutra says, put yourself in the mind of the dreamer. The dreamer sees himself there in the heavens, wearing the clothes that Devas wear, going everywhere around the heavens, and hanging out with the Devas. And all of the other people in the assembly back in the Jada Grove do not see what this dreamer sees. It's a vision that the Great Assembly can't see. So the voice hearers, the Shravakas, great disciples, are sitting beside the Bodhisattva, the dreamer, but it's as if their eyes were shut. The dreamer sees all these wonderful things happening. The arhats don't see them. Okay, so we get the second half of the analogy to say how sad. Okay, continuing here, this is the second of 10 analogies. Let's finish it up. Okay. Now, we get a picture of why the bodhisattvas see these things, but the sound hearers don't. Here are the reasons why. Ready? Okay. By the way, people are welcome while I'm reading the Chinese here on the screen. Notice we've got the Chinese characters, which you have to, some of you can read them, some can't, but we do have the Romanized sounds, the ABCDs with tone marks. So you can try some of these sounds in your own mouth, see how they feel. Chinese has different consonants than we have. A lot of the vowels are identical. So try it out, see how these sound. What you're seeing in ABCDs is the pronunciation of the Chinese characters above. And of course, if you can read the Hanyu Pinyin, the Guoyuan Zimu, this syllabary on the side, you're way ahead. So give it a try. Here we go. 一切菩萨世间诸王亦复如是，以久积积善根理故，发一切智光大愿故，学习一切佛功德故，修行菩萨庄严道故，圆满一切智智法故，满足普贤诸行愿故，去入一切菩萨智地故，游戏一切菩萨所住诸三昧故，亦能观察一切菩萨智慧境界无障碍故，是故悉见如来世尊不可思议自在身边。Okay, this is the summary of the analogy. Here we go. The states of the bodhisattvas and kings of the world are similar. They've accumulated the power of good roots for a very long time, and they brought forth vast great vows to realize wisdom. They've studied the virtue of Buddhas and have cultivated the adorned path of a bodhisattva. They perfected the dharmas of the wisdom of omniscience. They perfected all the practices and vows of Samantabhadra. They've embodied the levels of wisdom of bodhisattvas. They playfully roamed in the samadhis where bodhisattvas abide. They can contemplate the bodhisattva states of wisdom without any obstruction. For such reasons, they behold the world honored one's inconceivable spiritual transformations and self-mastery. Okay, so I consulted a commentary in preparation. I checked into Master Xuanzang's Avatamsaka commentary. Say, what's going on here? What's going on? Why is the sutra spending so much time saying that here's the Buddha? He hasn't begun to explain this last chapter of the sutra. We've just gathered the audience. But the sutra says, you know what? Here in the audience, there's a portion of the people assembled who are seeing something, who are not seeing something that everybody else is seeing. It's as if they're blind and unable to benefit from what's really going on. And the sutra is at length to say there are differences right here in the assembly. So in this last section right here, it said why that's true, and why the rest, the majority of the audience who actually this teaching is aimed at, are able to fully understand, fully witness what's going on in front of their eyes. Master Xuanzang, the Tang Dynasty commentator, says, what was the Chinese is just wu yan. They didn't have eyes. They couldn't see it. That's it. They couldn't see it. So I've been pondering this, because what it amounts to is saying right here in the Buddhist community, in the bigger body of Buddhism back in the Buddhist time, there were real differences. There were groups that were unequal. And we're spending a lot of time as this chapter gets going to talk about that. And of course, in a world of perfect harmony, you would say, oh, well, everybody's gathered in, right? Compassion is universal, right? Not the case, because we're dealing with human beings. We're dealing with people, even though the people it's talking about are highly accomplished meditators. They're really spiritually developed people, but they are hearing a very different story than the bodhisattvas who are the focus of this text. Anybody who has looked at Buddhist history has run across this interesting fact, which is that in the Buddha's lifetime, there were so many schisms and so much arguing and fighting among his disciples that on numerous occasions the Buddha would stand up from where he was trying to teach and he would say, "You guys work it out, I'm out of here." And he would go off into the forest, into the bush, into the woods and meditate, free from the arguments and the fighting and the haranguing going on amid his disciples. Now, who are we talking about? The numbers were, they often said the Buddha was followed by 1,250 disciples. That's the number given. So it's a large community of men and women who came from, and this is key to understanding, the Buddha in his teaching did not discriminate amid the 4 castes of India, which is revolutionary. That in itself is like worthy of talking about, because in India at the time, the castes did not mingle. If you were a Brahmin, you were on top, you were taught from childhood that you had to get up in the morning or else the sun wouldn't rise. There are chants that every Brahmin does that are to help the sun rise up. So yeah, a little bit of inflated importance, self-centered there, yeah, maybe, but that's how the teachings go. And all the rest of society reinforced that view. So the Brahmins were very much kind of isolated in their view of how the world was built, and they recited the Vedas, the world's oldest body of literature, to prove their point. So self-reinforcing, yeah, but that's what they did. The Brahmins didn't spend time with anyone other than those who came to petition them for favors, to ask them to do a wedding, to ask them who would come and make offerings to them. So all of society was vertically structured like that. The next one down, the kings and the warriors, that's the Kshatriya class. That was the caste that the Buddha belonged to, had their own rules and their own protocols, their own structures, their own ways they related to the Brahmins above them and the other 2 below them, the merchants, and then finally we used to say untouchables. Now there's the Kshudras was the way we talked about it. Now they're called the scavengers, because based on their work. There's a whole new postmodern way of looking at the 4 castes, but it doesn't change their verticality, the fact that it's 1 on top, 2 below that, 3, and then 1 on the bottom. There is no movement from the bottom up. There's no sense of social equality whatsoever in Indian culture to this day. It's the outcasts are still outcast. It was so vicious that it was taught until just recently, and there are still parts of India that will tell you that if a member of the fourth caste, the scavenger's caste, if they call the Harijan, children of God, that last caste, if they're walking down the street and for some reason their shadow happens to fall on a member of the caste above them, you'll never wash it clean. There are taboos against touching a broom handle that Harijan has used. If a member of the fourth caste is using a broom to sweep and that broom falls down, the members of the other caste will not touch that broom for fear that they will be defiled and never wash it clean. So you can see there's incredible caste distinctions in Indian society. The Buddha said, I don't care about that. Come cultivate the way. How am I going to structure my Sangha? Whoever comes first, goes first. First come, first served. Doesn't matter whether you're an untouchable or a Brahmin, you will follow based on seniority alone, and however you cultivate determines how quickly you advance. So in the Buddha's Sangha, there were arhats from every specific caste. Seeing is through the heart. Question, they didn't develop spiritual seeing. Seeing is through the heart? I don't know. How do you see? So, yeah, probably. Let's see here. Share my screen and then unshare. There we go. Seeing through the eyes and through the heart? I don't know, that's a poetic way to say it, I suppose, yeah. You see through your eyes, but there are different kinds of eyes. All right. So I think that the question that we just had was about the commentary of Master Changguan, Wu Yan Gu. They didn't have eyes, they couldn't see. So here we have men wearing the Buddha's robes, wearing patched cloth robes, sitting together, eating together, meditating together, going on alms rounds together, supporting each other all thrown in together during the rains retreat where they can't go out because the monsoon is coming down. Oh my goodness. Could they suddenly throw aside all of their cultural conditioning, social conditioning that they'd heard since they took their first breath? It probably wasn't that easy. As a result, the disciples fought among themselves regularly, gave the Buddha a headache, and he would leave. He would just go out in the woods and say, nope, I'm out of here. You guys work it out. And then they would go and they would promise to be good and they would bow in front of the Buddha, please come back and teach us again. And he would come back. So this is the history of the Buddha's Sangha. After the Buddha entered nirvana, within the first century, there were 17 different sects of disciples who couldn't get along and split. They split and they split and they split. And they would start a new group and they would start a new group. So, people are people, and we let our zhijian, the things we know and the things we see, our perspectives, break us up, make friends and enemies where there are none to begin with. How could the Buddha do this? How could he be such a social revolutionary and a reformer of the things that society took as taboo? He said, the externals don't matter. Cultivation is done on the mind and the nature, and the mind and the nature have no skin color, have no language base, have no socially determined status, have no income. The mind and the nature are where we cultivate. The bodies that we wear are a result of the things we did in the past. The things we're doing now determine how our bodies will appear in the future, and that includes gender. The Buddha ordained women, which was also taboo. The Buddha's Sangha included bhikshunis in his lifetime. Okay, so One of my favorite stories is in seminary, there I was. This is not one of those, a rabbi and a priest walked into a bar together, not one of those stories. This is my own experience. We were at a conference, this is during my doctoral program, and here was a Lutheran pastor, here was a rabbi, and me. And the topic was women, ordaining women. And so the Lutheran said, oh yeah, the Evangelical Lutheran Synod? He said, yes, the ELCA, we have been ordaining women as pastors in our synod. Of course, there's the Missouri Synod of Lutheranism that doesn't agree, but we in the ELCA have been ordaining women for the last 30 years. In fact, under my control, under my leadership, we have several women priests, pastors, ministers, Lutheran ministers, here in our school. And the rabbi said, that's wonderful. And yeah, that's really good. I'm glad to hear that. We both looked at the rabbi, and the rabbi said, don't you know? He said, we have been ordaining women rabbis for several decades now. We find that their teaching is excellent. And of course, we have women cantors, they sing. So we too have women in roles of leadership in the 20th century, now into the 21st century. So, very good, excellent. So they both turned to me and said, and how about you Buddhists? I said, well, the Buddha created opportunities for women to cultivate to success and be in roles of leadership 2,500 years ago. And the rabbi and the minister went, excellent, that's very noble, I'm glad to hear that, yeah, we approve. Yeah. So it's just that Buddhism is new in the West, so this history is unknown. But it's true. The Buddha was a social revolutionary. He upended the distinctions in society based on gender, money, status, caste, language, employment, all the things, the external markers of success in society. The Buddha said, not important in my Sangha. If you come to cultivate the way, you really do leave home and set that all aside. All right, that's history. Now, here in the Sutra, right in the middle of that homogeneity, that equality among all living beings, mind you, the Buddha was not only teaching humans, right? If you were a dragon, you could come and study. If you were a deva, you could come and study. But once you ordain, once you're wearing the robe of a monastic, following the Buddha's Dharma, are you able to suddenly set aside all of your 10, 20, or your 20, 30, 40, starting at 20, you can't ordain until you're 20, 30, 40 years of conditioning? Not so easy. So here we have people who, because of their karma, because of their, whatever it might be, their inability to make the Bodhi resolve, they can't hear what's going on. But the person sitting next to them, who has made that Bodhi resolve, can still hear and can still see. Okay, that's what's going on. Okay, so far so good. Time for some music. Let's get a break from my voice. We want this one right here. There we go. Thank you, Janice Ian, for this lovely song. To my left and to my right, I'm hearing stories of people catching COVID again for the second time sometimes, families coming down with it. So do not be careless. COVID can catch you. better times will come, better times will come. When this world learns to live as one, oh, better times will come. 明天会更好，明天会更好，世界和谐心大同，明天一定会更好。When we greet each dawn without fear, knowing loved ones soon will be near. When the winds of war cannot blow anymore, oh, better times will come. 面对困难毫不畏惧，亲朋好友不离不弃。路长马放南山，明天一定会更好。Try it. 明天会更好，明天会更好，世界和谐心大同，明天一定会更好。Better times will come, better times will come. This world learns to live as one, oh, better times will come. Banjo break. Though we live each day as our last, we know someday soon it will pass. We will dance, we will sing in that never-ending spring. Oh, better times will come. 生死转瞬一息之间，黑暗的夜晚幻变白天。大地会春，明天一定会更好。Last chance, here we go. 明天会更好，明天会更好，世界和谐心大同，明天一定会更好。Here we go. Better times will come, better times will come. This world learns to live as one. Oh, better times will come. Oh, better times will come. Oh, better times will come. I really like that progression. Alrighty. Now, let's see. Okay. I promised to some stories, and I want to share some thoughts on this. Some people will say, you know, I've heard that the Buddha forbade his disciples from showing off psychic powers. The arhats, the bodhisattvas, who had the 18 transformations of the arhat, could do those things, but the Buddha said, do not show them off. The reason being, if you display that you have superhuman abilities, the lay people who can't even imagine such a thing being possible will be drawn to you, and they will make offerings to you, and the good-hearted, well-meaning monk who followed my instructions and didn't show them off will not get those rewards. They won't get any offerings. So to preserve the equality of the Sangha, do not show off your psychic powers. Furthermore, even claiming that you have such abilities can trigger lay people to thoughts that you are very special and they need to give you a little more. And that will create dissension in the Sangha. So if you claim that you have superhuman abilities, that's called Da Da Wang Yu, grand scale false speech. It's one of the unrepentable offenses in the Sangha for bhikshus. So if you make those claims, you will no longer be a monk. So how serious was it that the Buddha didn't want people to, his disciples, to show off psychic powers? However, amid his disciples, the Buddha could use these, they're not gifts, they're hard-earned abilities that arise in the human mind from cultivation to teach, to inspire, to increase people's faith. So those, they're called senior disciples of Master Xuanhua, who were beside Master Xuanhua when he was bringing the Dharma to the West, have stories of how Shifu would teach to inspire disciples when the opportunities arose to greater effort in their cultivation. On Sundays, Master Hua would take us across town out of Gold Mountain Monastery over to the International Translation Institute over in Pacific Heights on Washington Street. A beautiful old mansion that was built in the 30s and magnificent architecture, and this is where the Buddhist nuns, this is where our nuns lived. They would leave Washington Street and come over to Gold Mountain every day for lunch and to do work of translation, etc., and to listen to the Dharma at night. Then they would go back to their dormitory there in Washington Street, IITBT, the International Institute for Translation of Buddhist Texts. On Sundays, Shifu would take everybody there. So this was one particular Sunday, and we were all getting into our station wagon to drive over there. And somebody that day had made an offering too late to be served to everybody at lunch. And so that offering was sitting out on the lunch counter. What was it? It was a pink baker's box of jelly donuts. Now, we had a disciple, we had a Dharma brother, a layman, named Gofa, Bob Olson. And Bob was known to one and all as someone possessed by a sweet tooth. It wasn't that Bob had a sweet tooth, the sweet tooth had Bob. I have personal experience with Bob's sweet tooth. I was his electrician disciple for a number of months, and we would go out every day, and Bob would, first thing, going out to jobs around the city of San Francisco, our first stop was the bakery, and Bob would buy 3 or 4 or 5 jelly donuts and chomp them down with a couple cans of Diet Pepsi. Yeah. And Bob loved his jelly donuts. He didn't try to pretend. He just really did. He loved just all kinds of sweets. Bob had a sweet tooth. So here were a box of jelly donuts, and it was after lunch. Our meal time had passed, and we didn't eat afternoon. We don't eat afternoon. So those donuts are going to be sitting on the counter until tomorrow, or maybe put into the fridge. And so as we were getting into the van in the station wagon to go over to Washington Street, Master Hua said, "Okay, we need somebody to watch the door while we're gone. Gofa, you watch the door. You stay. We'll tell you what happens when we get back. So you'll be all right. You can meditate here. 要好好看门口，不要让人把门口给丢了。He said, watch the door. Don't let the door disappear. Don't let anybody steal the front door, Bob. You do a good job of protecting Gold Mountain. You watch the door. And Olson goes, okay, Shervo. And he knew that the offering of the jelly donuts had been made publicly and that we had stopped eating for the day. You don't eat after noon if you're living in the monastery. So Bob was sitting by the front door in full lotus, waving to us as we drove away over to the other side of San Francisco to Pacific Heights from the Mission District. We drove over. So we get out, we're over there at Washington Street, go in, bow, light incense. Shifu starts to lecture. He's going to explain the Medicine Buddha Sutra or something. I forget what the text was at the time. And so halfway through the lecture, Shifu pauses and gets down from the seat where he's lecturing and goes into the office at Washington Street. We're all kind of, that's unusual. What's Shifu doing? And we heard the phone being dialed. And so Shifu came back, continued the lecture. And so then another half hour along, Shifu got down from the seat and went over and made a phone call. We heard the phone, couldn't hear the words. And then Shifu came back with a smile on his face, continued the lecture, and that was that. So we got in the van and drove back to Gold Mountain and went in. And here was Gofa. And when Shifu came in the door, Bob Olson was on his knees, bowing to Shifu, bowing. And just put his palms together. And Shifu smiled and said, oh, okay, Gofa, yeah, nobody stole the door. I guess you did a good job. And Bob said, Shifu, you can read my mind, he said. Shifu said, 当然，我如果不知道你心在想什么，我怎么会教导你们呢？ Shifu said, of course I can read your mind. If I didn't know what you were thinking, how could I possibly teach you? He said, and went upstairs to his quarters. We're like, what happened? What happened? Why are you bowing to Shifu like this? Why did Shifu say that? And Olson is like, he's sweating. You see, he's got big dark circles under his armpits. He said, as soon as you went, he said, those jelly donuts started to talk to me. I was sitting there meditating by the door, and the donuts started to talk, and they were saying, eat me, come on and eat me. I'm delicious. And he said, oh, I can't do that. I know. He said, I can't break the rules. Shifu asked me to watch the door. And he said, but I was really tempted. I was really, really tempted. And just about when I was going to uncross my legs and go down and grab the jelly donut, the phone rang. And it was Shifu on the phone. And Shifu said, Gofa, how are you doing? Watching the door? Okay, do a good job, Gofa. And hung up. And so I was like, oh, okay. I was like, I said, that was funny. How did Shifu? Never mind, I'm not going to break the rules. He said, I was sitting there meditating, and the donuts I could smell them, and I could taste them. And he said, I got down off my seat and was walking into the kitchen when the phone rang. And I went back to pick it up, and it was Shifu. And Shifu said, Gofa, how you doing? Do a good job. And he said, I hung up the phone, and I just started bowing. I've been bowing since. And when Shifu walked, he said, Shifu can read my mind. So we're all going, I guess he can. So the next day, Gofa was out, and he bought like a dozen jelly donuts and brought them in and offered them, ate 3 or 4 or 5 himself, but So that's the kind of story that is Shifu showing off psychic ability? I don't know. But he certainly increased the faith of that one young American disciple. Bob, after that, knew that he had help keeping his vows. Invisibly, when you have a real 大善知识, good and wise spiritual friend on your side, it's easier. It's easier to follow the rules. So that's those are the kind of stories. You could say Shifu was showing off. On the other hand, he didn't tell us. We saw one end of it, Shifu getting down off the seat to go make a phone call twice. We saw that part. And if Gofa hadn't told us what the other end, the receiver of the call, had happened, we never would have known. But I will say, that story circulated pretty quickly throughout all the disciples, and people said, yeah, I remember when, and we pretty much, all of us, had our own story of a true good and wise advisor. So the Buddha did use these abilities, but if you didn't have the eyes or ears to see them, and then I guess if you didn't believe it, you might just think, coincidence? Or that's strange, right? Right? So, okay. Let's proceed here. "一切声闻，诸大弟子，皆不能见，皆不能知，亦无菩萨清净眼。" Yet the great disciples, the Shravakas, could not see and could not know, because they lacked the Bodhisattva's purified vision. 譬如雪山聚众药草，良医亦不悉能分别。记住捕猎放牧之人，横住彼山，不见其药。此亦如是，以诸菩萨入至境界，具自在力，能见如来广大身边。诸大弟子为求自利，不欲利他；为求自安，不欲安他。虽在林中，不知不见。Their situation is reminiscent of the foothills of the Himalayas, where medicinal herbs abound and skillful physicians can identify them all. Even so, the hunters and herdsmen who live year-round on the mountain fail to see their medicinal value. So too, the bodhisattvas realized the states of wisdom, became replete with the power of self-mastery, and perceived the thus come ones, great spiritual transformations. The great disciples, however, knew only to benefit themselves and had no wish to benefit others, seeking their own tranquility. They did not wish for others' tranquility, which was why, although they were inside the grove, they could neither know nor see the thus come ones' transformations. Okay, number 3, analogy. This is easy to visualize. Imagine your neighborhood, and right underfoot there are wild plants that, when boiled and treated correctly, just for the right amount of time, are absolutely delicious. But someone who lacks that knowledge says, weeds, and runs the mower over them, right? Or poisons them, Roundup poisons them. How sad, right? This wonderful, nutritious, wild source of chlorophyll and vitamin C and all is just a weed to somebody who doesn't know what it is. So bodhisattvas who know are replete with self-mastery. They cultivate the way. They see what the Buddha is doing, but disciples don't. They lack that fundamental compassion that makes a difference. So as a result, the Buddha is inspiring and transforming with his abilities. The Arhat disciples don't see it. Okay, the example that I used is from real life. On a pilgrimage that I was part of, this high school science teacher, biology teacher, came out from Santa Barbara and said, "Hey, monks," he said, "here, brought you a copy of this book." And the name of the book was Stalking the Wild Asparagus. Ewell Gibbons, Eullgibbons. Still available, still out there, still in print. Stalking the Wild Asparagus. Ewell Gibbons was a plant botanist. He knew what was edible and, importantly, what was not edible. And he opened up this world of wild plants, foraging, it's called. So the high school biology teacher said, "So, fella, look," he said, "Oh, you're standing on it right now." He points down to my feet. Boom. So I moved my foot. He said, "See that? That's called dock, D-O-C-K. Also called sorrel, S-O-R-R-E-L. Has a bunch of other names." He said the French cultivate it commercially because it tastes just like spinach greens. It's super nutritious. It's everywhere. He said, "I would recommend you take it, like go 20 feet away from the road, because auto exhaust will have put lead and stuff on anything close to the highway. But go over there 20 feet away, look over there, there's a whole patch of it." He said, you'll know what age you like. Get the young short ones, not the big tall ones." And he said, delicious. He said, steam it up, add some margarine, yummy. So he's like, sure, okay. Especially mendicant monks who live on alms. We live on people's offerings. We discovered dock and sorrel, and oh my goodness, it grows everywhere along the California coast, and suddenly, instantly, the ground under our feet turned into a grocery store produce section that we could pick to our heart's content. From that day on, we added sorrel to our menu pretty much 3-4 times a week because it was available. Then he went on and said, "See that? Dandelion greens, boil the roots, just great for coffee." He said, "Dry the roots." He said, "See this? This is Queen Anne's lace." He said, "Don't touch it. Queen Anne's lace looks exactly like what killed Socrates, hemlock. Hemlock and Queen Anne's lace look just alike. You have to be good to tell the difference." He said, "Don't touch that stuff." He said, "However, over here, this is star anise. This is really, 大茴香 in Chinese. This is really good." He said, "This is a great seasoning." So he showed us the difference, and he said, "It's all here in Ewell Gibbons' book." He said, "Bon appetit, guys," he said. And so with that visit from that kind-hearted science teacher, we joined the subculture of foragers, foraging for our own wild foods. And oh my goodness, one of the things you miss most when you're out on the road is vegetables, greens. And here they were, all underfoot. And then before he left, he said, one more recommendation, fellas. He said, mushrooms, don't. He said, stay away from gathering mushrooms. He said, you don't want to make a mistake. Now, I know there are mycologists out there who love foraging for mushrooms. Well, and more power to you. Good luck. You can really, if you're lucky, you can find free, delicious mushrooms. He said, recommend against it. He said, in this world, he said, there are old mushroom hunters and there are bold mushroom hunters. But there are no old and bold mushroom hunters. If you're a bold mushroom hunter, you're dead. You die young. If you don't know what it is, don't touch it. He said, especially here in Australia, that happens a lot. People eat Amanita muscaria. They think it looks so pretty. It's called the destroying angel, death caps. They eat one, their liver liquefies in their body. You can't save them. If they've eaten enough of it and it's been long enough, can't save them. Happens every year. Don't, he said. However, the other stuff, go for it. So, yeah, true story. So when I see this example of the foothills of the Himalayas, where skillful physicians, they take a look at this plant and they go, yeah, wow, that's great. That's materia medica. That will cure this and this and this and this. So they can truly gather all the medicinal herbs they need on the mountains. Hunters who are not healers and herdsmen who don't have the leisure don't know what the plant is. It's weeds to them. It's just plants, bushes. So they don't know. The sutra says, likewise, these disciples who, and here with this paragraph we see why they lacked the ability to see what the Buddha was really teaching, because they were satisfied with their own accomplishments. They benefited themselves, they got tranquil, they were right there in the Jade Grove, couldn't see what the Buddha was teaching. Okay? Shall we do one more? Let's do another one here. 譬如地中有诸宝藏，种种真一心皆充满，有一丈夫聪慧明达，善能分别一切福藏。其人富有大福德力，能随所欲自在而取，奉养父母，珍恤亲属，老病穷发，弥补均善。其无智慧，无福德人，随意置于宝藏之处，不知不见，不得其意。Consider how the earth contains jewel caches filled with many rare and valuable gems. Imagine then a great hero, wise and knowledgeable, adept at finding all the hidden treasures. This person, moreover, possesses great blessings and virtue. When he searches the jewel stores, he takes the gems he likes in order to contribute to his parents' welfare, to foster his following, the aged, the sick, the impoverished, all of whom he benefits impartially. Somebody who lacked wisdom, blessings, and virtue might encounter the jewel caches, but neither recognize them nor see them, and will not gain their benefits. Okay, there we go. Whoops, sorry. We gotta continue one more paragraph here to finish the analogy. Ready? 此亦如是，诸大菩萨有尽智言，能入如来不可思议深深境界，能见佛神力，能入诸法门，能游三昧海，能供养诸佛，能以正法开悟众生，能以色摄受众生。诸大声闻不能得见如来神力，亦不能见诸菩萨众。Okay, in the same way the great bodhisattvas obtain and command the pure wisdom eye. They can enter into thus come one's inconceivably profound states. They can see the Buddha's spiritual powers. They can enter into all gateways to Dharma. They can navigate the oceans of samadhis. They can make offerings to the Buddhas. They can use the proper Dharma to enlighten living beings. They can use the four dharmas of attraction to gather in living beings. But all the great Shravakas could neither see the thus come one's spiritual powers, nor could they see the assemblies of bodhisattvas. Okay, there it is. That's the, you can say it's sad in a way. What else can you say? It's there, the sutras, analogies, show the situation. It's like the ghosts are right beside the river and they're thirsty, but they can't drink. They see the water and it dries up, right? The dreamer is there in the heavens, able to see all the things going on, but someone sitting right beside him doesn't have that experience. They're out of it. They're not allowed in it. And then the hunters on the mountain are standing on top of valuable herbs with diseases they may themselves have, but they think it's weeds. And the poor person is here looking for caches of jewels that are right under his feet, and he doesn't see them. So Sutra saying, yeah, that's the reality of people who they have the Dharma, they've put in the effort, but something is missing, and they don't get the full story. So interesting that the sutra takes so much time to explain this this rift right within his Sangha. What's at stake? What's at stake is this wisdom could disappear if people don't cultivate it, if they don't follow the formula and make the Bodhi resolve. If they don't do that, then this incredible wisdom lore could vanish. That's what's at stake. Okay, the second story that I want to share with everybody comes from this resource that we are exploring on tomorrow night at the lecture of the City of 10,000 Buddhas. It's actually, my body is here in Queensland, but I lecture via Zoom and YouTube for the audience at CTDB and worldwide. We're sharing, after we lecture on the 10 Transferences chapter of the Avatamsaka, share the story of Master Xuanzang, his biography. He has been at Nalanda University studying Sanskrit, learning the sutras from wonderful teachers there, and years have passed and it's time for him to go home. And these kings of India along the way hear about him and decide that they want his teaching personally. And so Master Xuanzang has written an essay. And his essay is about refuting the Wai Dao we talked about at the start of the lecture today, the non-Buddhists, the heretical sects, those who have ideas of the Dharma but don't take it to heart. They don't follow those methods of practice, and as a result, fall short in their cultivation. So these two kings, King Shiladitya, King Kumara, and I'll just tell you the story. These kings have heard about Master Xuanzang, and they want him to come to their courts. So, here we go. In the morning of the following day, an envoy of King Shiladitya arrived, and so the master and King Kumara went to his palace. They reached the side of the palace, and the king himself and 20 of his own Sangha members come out to receive the master, and they invite him back in the palace. Here's our monk sitting amid the other spiritual teachers of King Shiladitya, okay, and the king himself. So the king entertains him, offers music, offers food, splashes flowers over his head, and the king says, okay, I've heard that you have composed an essay, the Po Xie Lun, Po Xie Jian Lun, Refutation of Evil Views. Where is that book? Could you speak Dharma for me now? He's requesting Dharma. Master Xuanzang says, yeah, I got it right here. He hands it to the king. The king reads it on the spot and goes, wow, this is wonderful. And he looks at his own teachers, who were the number one big shot spiritual teachers in his community. He says, you know, when the sun shines, candles get dim. When there's thunder in the heavens, your booming hammers are muffled. He has now refuted all the theories that you have been teaching me. Would you like to argue? Would you like to debate him? All the monks go, well, maybe not today, maybe some other day, right? No, we don't. The king says, your teacher, Devasena, he's talking to his Sangha. Your teacher regarded himself as the most learned of all the scholars and well-versed in the teachings of the various philosophical schools. He slandered Mahayana Buddhism. When he heard about the arrival of this guest monk of great virtue, he excused himself. He had an expedient trip to Vaishali to go bow and to avoid him. So, I know you are ignorant, he said. Whoa, slam. Okay, so sitting there in the court, the king had a princess, younger sister, very clever, very intelligent, and well-learned in Dharma from other schools. She sat behind the king, and she heard Master Xuanzang explaining his teachings, the Mahayana Dharma, and pointing out the shallowness of Theravada doctrines. She was so pleased, she couldn't stop praising the master. The king says, "Your treatise is really good. I and my teachers here all believe in it, don't we?" He says, looking left and right. They go, yes, 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 sir, Amitofo. So he says, "I'm afraid that those whose theories this treatise breaks with their ignorant views will disagree. So I'm going to call a meeting for you where the rivers meet, Kanyakubja, and invite all the monks and all the Brahmanic heretics of the 5 Indias to come to show them the wonderful and subtle teachings of Mahayana Buddhism so they will stop slandering it, and also to show your virtue to subdue their arrogance," he says. Okay. What do you suppose happened? Well, you're going to have to come back next week to get the conclusion of the story. We've run out of time. So, oh my goodness, how wonderful. So the situation of the Buddha describing what happened in the Avatamsaka assembly, that also took place in China, similar situation, just 1100 years later. Okay, so we'll continue next week with the story of what happened. It's a powerful, wonderful, incredible, true story from the life of Master Xuanzang. Okay, let's see now. I believe that there won't be any news today from the monks at the Berkeley Monastery because they are on retreat in Virginia. They're at Forestama Monastery in Virginia. Ajahn Dik Shilaratana is there, so we'll hear about their stories next week. Meanwhile, I want to take you out to the new website of GCDR, Gold Coast Dharma Realm. Chan Monastery in the stillness of the forest. That's actually where we're sitting right now. Wave to the monk sitting in the middle. The door opens. And can you see the monk's spiritual powers? I hope so. Wait, there's no monk sitting there. What? Okay, read more. Let's take a look. Page is under construction. Okay, so we're still building it, but here's the events. Dharma lectures, stories, Gallery Memory Lane, Multi-Religious Unity, GCDR. Is this ready? Can you take a look? Oh. GCDR, oh, look at that. Yeah, lots of photographs of the wonders, Gold Coast Dharma Realm. Hey, some of those pictures look familiar. All right, there we are. So come take a look. Here's a story of our teacher. We have children's teachings and how to find us, our address, contact, etc., etc. All righty, so just to let you all know that now that is gcdr.org.au, gcdr.org.au, and where's the Chinese site, Sam? Go other side. Okay, let's see here. Zhongwan, right there. Click on this one, and we can see the very same site in Chinese. 中文有中文网深静树林中的禅寺。看，济南法界简介。因缘初识。Okay, here's the location. Oh, goodness, beautiful website in Chinese. For those of you who 金安缘起, yeah. Okay, and the story of our teacher. Take a look here. And yeah. Beautiful. Here's Shufu's page, long, beautiful biography. Okay, so do come take a look and see if we can get our English back. Here we go. Oh, who's that? All right. So, there you are. So we're hoping that folks will do take a look at that. Furthermore, we have our story today. Good Karma Music. Lucas from Utah says, when my friends are going through tough times, I usually try to talk to them, check up on them as often as I can. Sometimes I take them out on walks or picnics to get them some fresh air and distract them from problems. Picnics always seem like the best option because give us time to talk and also to stuff our bodies and comfort our feelings with food. Thank you, Lucas. And we sent you some Buddhist music, your pick. Go to dharmaradio.org to get what you want, your pick of Buddhist music and also Catholic monastic folk songs. Beautiful spiritual music available to you for the price of a good deed. So please do dharmaradio.org. Go take a look. All right. Time now to dedicate merit. And here we go. Make a wish. As one and radiant with light, share the fruits of peace with hearts of goodness, luminous and bright. If people hear and see how hands and hearts can find in giving unity, may our minds awake to great compassion, wisdom, and to joy. May kindness find reward. May all who sorrow leave their grief and pain. May this boundless light dispel the darkness of our endless night. Because our hearts are one, this world of pain turns into paradise. May all become compassionate and wise. May all become compassionate and wise. May all become compassionate and wise. And to wrap up, we want to bow to Buddhas. Invite you to join me. Make 3 bows from where you're sitting. Here we go. Bow in respect to the Venerable Master. Okay, that's going to wrap it up for us for today. We'll see you all next week. Aum Tofo. Be well, everyone.